Yeah.
What you think about that?
He didn't do it.
Fuck out of here. All the evidence that's out there.
Listen, hold on. If they find a dead body in me and your car, and this is our car, do you think they'll let me and you stay out like long? They got all, so think about it. All the circumstantial evidence they found on OJ, they placed it. So you mean to tell me they got all of this on this and he still get to move freely amongst America?
Charleston White just turned the entire story upside down, flipping the script with shocking claims nobody saw coming. David was dragged into the mess with receipts so wild, the internet could barely keep up. What Charleston revealed had people stunned, questioning everything they thought they knew about this case. When the news broke that human remains were found inside a Tesla linked to 20-year-old music star David, social media went into a complete meltdown. Fingers were flying before facts even surfaced. The media had already branded him guilty, fans were digging through his lyrics for clues, and brands rushed to cut ties to protect their image. But through all that chaos, Charleston White came in loud, raw, and unfiltered, saying what everyone else was too scared to even whisper. He declared David didn't do it, and get this, he didn't just talk, he came with proof to back it up. Charleston zeroed in on the one thing nobody could ignore. There were no charges, and in his eyes, that said it all. In America, black men get locked up off nothing, Charleston blasted. If they had something real, David would be in handcuffs right now. And honestly, he's not wrong. Every single day, people get picked up with half the evidence, or no evidence at all. So Charleston's stance was clear. If David was really involved, he'd already be gone. The real question now is, what does Charleston know that we don't, and why is no one else brave enough to say it out loud? They'll lock him up just to stall if they had something, Charleston warned. And he meant every single word. For him, the silence from the police wasn't proof of a secret case building. It was proof they had nothing solid at all. It meant exactly one thing. They had nothing. And to drive it home, Charleston came with one of his raw, unfiltered analogies designed to snap people out of the hype. He said straight up, if this was just some regular dude off the block and not a rising star, that man would have been in a cell yesterday. If there was any real connection, David wouldn't still be out here doing shows and moving around freely. No arrest, no court date, no nothing. That alone, Charleston claimed, spoke louder than all the wild theories floating online. And he didn't stop there. He went straight at the so-called evidence the internet was obsessing over. The girl's age, the leaked pics, the supposed matching tattoos, even fans trying to decode David's lyrics as hidden confessions. But to Charleston, it all looked way too neat, way too staged, like somebody wanted David to look guilty without proving a single thing. The math just wasn't adding up. Think about it. A young black artist allegedly tied to a missing 14-year-old, and yet still no cuffs, no charges, not even being held overnight. Charleston wasn't buying it, not for a second. He wanted everyone to pause and really ask themselves why the law was so quiet. To him, that silence wasn't failure. It might just be the clearest proof David isn't who they're trying to paint him as. Charleston didn't tiptoe. He dived headfirst into the deep end and asked a wild question nobody else dared to touch. What if this was a setup? He pointed out how the body was discovered in a way that felt way too calculated for someone like David to pull off. They say he did all this, but still no arrest. Charleston pressed, "Come on now." As his words spread across X, YouTube, and IG, the internet caught fire. Some people swore he was going too far defending the undefendable, but others, they said he was the only one bold enough to finally say what they'd been whispering all along. This whole story just wasn't adding up. And Charleston didn't just drop one comment and disappear. Nah, he stayed locked in, pressing the issue over and over. The fact that David was still walking around free didn't just confuse him, it made the entire case look crooked. To drive it home, Charleston even pulled out one of the wildest throwbacks ever, the OJ case. That wasn't just for drama, it was a warning. He said, when the system wants you locked up, they'll make it happen fast, even if the evidence is paper thin, so why not David? If the so-called evidence was really that strong, where are the cuffs? Charleston pushed that question hard, and when you hear it like that, the whole thing starts sounding real suspicious. Was somebody trying to take David down? Or was the truth buried under all the noise? Charleston wasn't afraid to go there, throwing out raw theories, no filter, no sugarcoating. He didn't trust the official version of events at all, and he wasn't scared to let it be known. These weren't polished legal takes. These were street-level thoughts tossed like firecrackers. That's exactly why people tuned in. Charleston wasn't reading off court papers. He was speaking from the gut, bold and emotional. And through all that heat, one thing stayed clear. He didn't buy the idea that David was connected to this 14-year-old girl. That tattoo everyone kept hyping up, Charleston laughed at it. He said just because two people got the same ink don't mean they're linked. Fans swore that tiny matching symbol was proof of some secret tie, but Charleston wasn't going for it. He said it looked way more like folks stretching a story to fit a headline than real evidence. Then came the line that lit social media on fire. Charleston turned the spotlight toward the girl herself, and the way he said it had the internet exploding in outrage. Cold, no empathy, but to Charleston, this wasn't about disrespect, and it was about making people question a story that felt way too easy.
So I'm saying, let me think outside the box. Maybe his mama done it. Maybe her mama done it and set him up. Maybe one of them racist uncles or cousins don't like her. Maybe the other boyfriend done it. Maybe the pimp who was sex trafficking her for the last year when she ran away done it. And I know they said, man, he wrong for calling her a little hoe, but she was. Little girl don't run away from home. Little hoes and little...
Critics fired back hard, accusing him of blaming someone who couldn't even speak for herself, saying he crossed the line. But others stood behind him, claiming Charleston was just forcing people to face another angle, one the media refused to touch. Charleston White doesn't chase comfort, he chases truth, even if it makes people squirm. And to him, the biggest red flag was race. He repeated it over and over. They don't let black men walk from this kind of stuff, not in America. That line spread fast across social feeds, and to Charleston, it was the clearest logic out there. If David really did all this, he'd already be behind bars. That's why Charleston's voice cut through the noise. While others obsessed over lyrics and tattoos, he zoomed out and hit the raw question, why is this man still free? He wasn't running defense for clout. He was exposing a system he believed was built to crush men like David. He wasn't talking about one single case. He was calling out a whole pattern. Charleston had seen it too many times. Young black men judged in minutes, blamed even quicker. So when this case dragged on with no charges, it smelled off to him. Like something deeper was moving behind the scenes. By now, Charleston wasn't just raising questions. He was daring people to prove him wrong. He spoke with the fire of someone who'd watched injustice play out his whole life. To him, none of it made sense. A teen found in David's Tesla, whispers of a connection, lyrics being twisted into clues, and still nothing. Charleston looked at the same so-called evidence everyone else saw and flipped it. He said it proved nothing. In fact, he claimed there was too much evidence. And that's exactly what made it all look staged. He flipped the whole script upside down. Charleston argued that if David was really guilty, the system would have pounced instantly, especially on a young black man in the spotlight. The silence wasn't mercy, it was a sign. Something deeper had to be going on. That's when Charleston started throwing out the questions nobody else dared to ask. What if this ain't even David's mess? He pressed. What if the whole thing is staged to look clean, but it's fake? Those what ifs set the internet on fire. Some folks blasted him as reckless, but others leaned in. Because let's be real, setups in the world of fame aren't rare at all, and Charleston knew exactly how to keep that tension alive. He circled back to one simple fact. David is still free. Now rumors were flying. People swore he was linked to a 13-year-old, pointing to pictures, whispers, and messy talk online. But Charleston clapped back. You really think if this was real, police wouldn't have grabbed him by now? His answer was firm. David didn't do it. That was the hill he planted his flag on, and he knew folks were gonna hate him for it. Critics said he crossed the line, ignoring a child's story and making excuses. But Charleston wasn't fazed. He thrives in heat. He never backs down. Charleston told people to look at history, at all the cases where young black men were snatched up on rumors alone, locked away over maybes. And now here's David with cars, songs, photos, and headlines tying his name to chaos, and yet he's still free? To Charleston, that wasn't luck, that was proof. Millions online had to pause. Even if they didn't agree, they couldn't deny Charleston made them question the story. But here's the thing, his defense of David didn't just pop out of nowhere. To understand why his words went so viral, you gotta understand who Charleston White is. He ain't just another loud YouTube voice. He's lived through the chaos himself. He broke it down raw. Born in Texas, 1977, by just 14, his life had already spun off the rails. One night outside a Foot Locker turned violent, a man lost his life, and Charleston, still a teen, was charged as an adult. He stayed locked up until he turned 21. That moment changed everything. Some say it defined him, claiming he's got no business speaking on right or wrong, that with a past like his, he can't defend anybody. But Charleston sees it completely different. That story is the reason he does speak, because he knows exactly what it feels like to get swallowed by the system. He knows how fast things move when you're young, black, and without grace. So when he says David might be innocent, he ain't just talking, he's speaking from scars and lived experience. Charleston's entire brand comes from that past. That one life-altering mistake as a teen fuels every word he spits today. After prison, he tried to flip the script, stepping into activism, even launching HOPO, hypocrisy over politics, to keep kids out of gangs and off the streets. For a moment, it looked like he was chasing real change, using his story to steer others away from the same trap. But Charleston was never built for quiet redemption. He's loud, he's messy, he shakes the room every time he talks, and by the 2020s, he was louder than ever, carving a name by calling out everybody. Rappers, politicians, whole communities. Nobody was off limits. T.I., Boozy, whoever. Charleston used their names to drive his message and stir the pot, and it wasn't just words either. He went after families, called out parenting, clowned reputations. Every call out went viral, every feud brought more clicks, and every single time people had to stop and wonder, is this man speaking truth or just chasing clout? One of the wildest moments came with his beef against streamer Aiden Ross. In 2023, Charleston straight up pepper sprayed one of Ross's crew on camera. No filter, no warning, just chaos exploding in real time. Legal threats flew instantly, and the internet couldn't look away. Then came the comedy show incident. Hecklers in the crowd, and instead of calming things down, Charleston pulled out fat stacks of cash and taunted them. To some, that was comedy. To others, it was proof he wasn't an activist at all, just a man addicted to shock and spotlight. But that's exactly why folks can't stop watching. He's a walking contradiction. One day bashing gang life and preaching accountability, the next day mocking tragedies and laughing at death. In September 2025, Charleston went viral again, this time going after Charlie Kirk's family right after his passing. He called it white-on-white crime and laughed, cold, ruthless, but so very Charleston. That's the thing. He's part critic, part chaos agent, and always unpredictable. So when he turned his focus toward David's case, people paid attention, not just because of what he said, but because of who was saying it. Charleston's name carries weight. His voice doesn't whisper, it claps. And this time, his fight wasn't with a rapper or a politician. It was with the system itself. By the time he stood behind David, Charleston already had a messy record. Scandals, viral rants, endless headlines. He wasn't stepping in as some clean outsider, he was the controversy, and his presence made the noise even louder, way louder. Earlier in 2024, he stirred more outrage by mocking the deaths of King Von and Takeoff. He didn't just mention them, he laughed, dismissed their legacies, and called it the natural end of the streets. For many, that was the moment Charleston stopped being seen as a reformed activist and fully embraced being a professional troublemaker. Then came his feud with Boozy. Charleston didn't just diss him, he came straight for his parenting, saying Boozy was setting his kids up for the same chaos he once lived himself. That one hit deep. And when Boozy clapped back, Charleston only cranked it up louder. He started tossing out threats that walked the line between dark jokes and something dead serious. To Charleston, it was just being real. To others, it sounded straight up like harassment. And it didn't stop there. Even the police weren't off limits. Charleston called out whole departments, mocked police chiefs, and once even claimed he'd shoot back if cops ever came at him. Now remember, this is the same man who preached against gang life. But then he'd hop on live flashing weapons or stirring beef like it was a sport. The contradictions were endless. But somehow Charleston thrived inside that chaos. By 2025, he wasn't just an activist, he was a walking headline. Whether trolling rappers, waving guns on Instagram, or dragging celebrities through the mud, Charleston knew how to keep his name buzzing. In interviews, he turned controversy into straight-up currency. So when he came out defending David, critics didn't even flinch. They rolled their eyes and said, "Here he goes again." To them, it wasn't about truth, it was about clicks. And honestly, they had a point. A rising pop star tangled in a scandal is prime content for a chaos agent like Charleston. But Charleston never kept his thoughts quiet. He shouted his defense of David across YouTube, TikTok, and X, blasting it to millions. One clip stripped of context went viral instantly. Some laughed, others nodded, and a ton of comments all echoed the same thing. I don't like Charleston, but he's not lying. That's the wild power he holds. People may hate him, but they can't stop watching. His reputation stays under fire, yet his voice only grows louder. So when he stood up for David, folks had to listen, not because he's polished, but because he's raw, unpredictable, and real to the bone. And for Charleston, this wasn't just about David. It was personal. Charleston saw himself in the young star when another black teen caught in a system that moves fast and shows no mercy. The same man who mocked dead rappers, clown victims, and stirred controversy for fun was now standing tall as a so-called protector of justice. Whether people believed him or not, Charleston made it impossible to ignore. He wasn't just defending David, he was defending himself, his past, his pain, and his belief that the system only shows mercy when it chooses to. And while his words spread all over the internet, the case itself only got murkier. New rumors, new leaks, strange updates, and then came the big twist. The identity of the victim was finally confirmed. Authorities revealed the body found in the Tesla did belong to the missing 14-year-old girl. Her remains had been hidden in the trunk, carefully concealed. It sounded like the final piece, but even then, police repeated the same line again and again. No arrests have been made at this time. The whole case turned into pure content. TikTok sleuths went frame by frame through David's music videos, especially Romantic Homicide, treating the lyrics like confessions. Others mapped his tour dates against the girl's disappearance, hunting for overlaps. But with all that noise flying, nothing concrete surfaced, nothing solid at all. No public DNA match, no eyewitness, no confirmed digital trail, just rumors, whispers, and way too many TikTok theories. Still, the case wasn't frozen. Detectives were moving behind the curtain, tracking phone pings, digging into texts, and even coordinating across state lines, since the car and body had reportedly crossed borders before it was found. And that's exactly where Charleston's voice turned risky. When he went public declaring David innocent, he wasn't just defending him, he was reshaping the whole story. Millions tuned in, and soon fans started parroting his words. Hashtags like #FreeDavid and #Charleston said it shot up on X. That's the power of viral. It doesn't just talk about the news, it rewrites it. And in David's case, Charleston became the loudest pen in the room. It didn't stop online either. His clips got so big that even mainstream outlets were forced to cover him. Reporters who wanted to stick to hard facts suddenly had to bring up Charleston White, a man with no law degree, no badge, no insider info, just a mic and a massive reach. Opinion pieces exploded overnight. Some called Charleston reckless, accusing him of tampering with an open case by shouting innocence without proof. Others admitted he might have a point. No arrest isn't nothing. Love him or hate him, one thing was crystal clear. Charleston had yanked the case into a louder, messier spotlight. Fans split right down the middle. On one side, David's loyal followers, many of them young, clung to Charleston's words like gospel. They quoted him, stitched his clips, echoed his line. On the other side, critics blasted Charleston, saying his take disrespected the girl and her grieving family. Social media turned into an all-out war zone. Fights broke out, timelines got messy, and some users even went as far as doxing each other just for disagreeing. What should have been a quiet investigation turned into pure chaos online. Meanwhile, law enforcement didn't budge for hashtags. They never called Charleston out directly, but quiet pushback started leaking. Sources hinted investigators were still grinding, digging through phones, footage, and witness accounts. Anonymous voices claimed no arrest didn't mean David was innocent. It just meant prosecutors didn't want to rush and blow the case in court. But Charleston flipped that too. To him, every no comment and every delay wasn't strategy, it was a cover-up. And the longer cops stayed silent, the louder Charleston got. The internet kept repeating his question, why hasn't David been charged? No one had a straight answer. And Charleston turned that silence into momentum. What started as a crime story had now exploded into something way bigger about race, justice, fame, and who really gets to decide guilt when viral voices drown out official ones. Charleston stood louder than law enforcement, bolder than legal experts, and more viral than journalists, trying to stick to the story. Behind the noise, detectives were still working quietly, following digital trails, federal teams moving across state lines. But for David's fans, none of that mattered. Charleston's words hit harder than any press release. Flawed or not, his voice gave people something to hold on to, a script to fight back against headlines. And in this digital age, sometimes the story hits harder than the facts. Fans, brands, media, everybody's stuck in limbo, just waiting for charges, waiting for an arrest, waiting for something real. And while the world waited, Charleston thrived, because the longer nothing happened, the stronger his voice sounded. No proof, no cuffs. That silence echoed louder than any evidence. The case isn't closed. The truth's still blurry. But one thing's undeniable, and Charleston didn't just jump into a viral story, he remixed the whole beat. He made David's innocence just as loud as the crime claims, spinning speculation into debates, debates into viral content, and content into raw power. Now, David's career hangs in the balance, trapped between loyal fans and an industry too scared to move. Law enforcement's under pressure, push without proof, and Charleston's already built the backlash waiting to explode. For the public, this is a wake-up call about how fast truth can get buried under clicks, edits, and loud voices. So now, I want to hear from you. What do you think about Charleston White's defense of David? Was he exposing a setup or just stirring chaos? Drop your thoughts in the comments, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and tap that bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Because trust me, the next chapter is about to get even messier.